Hi, welcome everyone. We will be starting very soon. Just let people join. Whilst we're waiting, if you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat, tell us your name, where you're joining from, a bit about perhaps your job or your role, be great to hear from you. As I say, we'll start in just a couple of minutes. Hi, so we've got Ophelia joining from Istanbul. Great to have you joining us, Ophelia. See, we've got lots of people joining, so we'll give people another minute or two before we get started. Got Veronica from Mexico, Ashley from Istanbul also, people from Chile, India. Wow, we've got quite an international group joining. Great to see that. Colombia, Mexico, lots of people from Mexico. And Belize. All these places sound very nice for a holiday. Okay, we'll just give people another 30 seconds. As I say, whilst we're waiting, if people could just introduce themselves. And then we'll get started. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. And we're really excited to share what we've been working on over the last sort of 6 months or so. So today's webinar is about what's new in EnglishScore. And I'm going to be sharing sort of 5 new features that, as I say, we've been working on over the last 6 months, covering a range of different areas from sort of security to how we assess speaking and writing, and a whole range of different features and new kind of things to look out for when you're taking the test. So we expect the webinar will last for about an hour. We'll cover the 5 updates. That includes room scan, ID verification, audit review, student licenses, and AI grading. And then we'll have some time for questions as well at the end. If you do have questions, please use the Q&A box, and then we can pick those up at the end and hopefully get round to answering all your questions. Very briefly about actually 2 of us presenting today. So my name is Ben Cook. I'm the assessment manager at EnglishScore. I guess like many of you, I started life as an English teacher. And then over the last sort of 10 years or so, I've been working in English assessment, specifically sort of online digital-based assessment. And I would also like to introduce Dragos. Dragos, would you like to say a few words before we start?
Yes, thank you very much, Ben. Hello, everyone. I'm Dragos Sasu. I'm leading the product effort here at EnglishScore. And I think the thing I'm most proud of is I'm coming from an English as a second language background. I know the challenges of a person who has to learn English and who has to test their level. And I've also been working quite a lot in the debate space. I've been training a lot of people into making arguments in English. So I think that was my background before I joined EnglishScore. And then EnglishScore was just a canvas for me to further explore how to make that education in a structured manner. So looking forward to this. And thank you, everyone, for joining.
Great. All right. Now, I think we've probably got a mix of people. I guess some people are already familiar with EnglishScore, and others are perhaps new to EnglishScore. So I would like to do a very sort of brief overview of what EnglishScore is, and how it works before we jump into these 5 updates. So EnglishScore is a 4-skill test for general English proficiency. So it's actually made up of 3 tests. So we've got core skills, which is grammar, vocabulary, reading and listening. We then have a speaking test, and we also have a writing test. And they're modular. So you could just take the core skills, or you could take all 4 skills. Obviously, if you take all 4, you get a much more rounded, better picture of someone's English proficiency. And what we're assessing is sort of both general and workplace English. So designed to be very useful, very immediate, and very relevant for our test takers. The test itself is delivered on a mobile phone. So you download an app from the App Store, Google Play, and you, as I say, you take the test on your mobile phone. Obviously, that gives you a huge sort of advantage in terms of being able to take it at home, take it at work, take it at school. You don't need to travel to a test center. And you can take this at any time that you like, wherever is suitable for you, as long as it's a good testing environment. Now, as part of that, we also include a lot of different security features, and Dragos will be talking a lot more about this as we go through to ensure that test takers, teachers, schools can actually rely on those results and can make decisions based on those test results. Third point here is the test itself is sort of being validated. We built the test in collaboration with CRELA, which is the Centre for Research in English Language Learning and Assessment, based at the University of Bedfordshire. And the test is used by a whole range of different organizations, by governments, by ministries, by universities all around the world. So we have test takers from hundreds of different countries, all with different backgrounds, different languages, all using our test every day. And the test itself is quite flexible. It could be used as a placement test if you want to put students into the right class. It could be used as a progress test to sort of check how students are progressing and which areas they need to work on. Or lastly, it could be used as sort of an exit test, as a certified test. And as part of the testing results, you do get a certificate, which sort of shows your score, shows your CFR level, and so on. So designed to be very flexible, designed to fit in with your needs. And as part of that as well, we also offer sort of different reporting tools and so on, which again, we're going to touch on as we go through this presentation. So I mentioned 5 updates. And the first of these is sort of the audit review, which falls under that understanding or being able to sort of use the results that you're getting from the test. How we've made some changes to how we can actually help you understand how well your students are doing. We're going to provide an update on the room scan, which is very closely linked to the security side of things. We're going to give you an update on something new that's coming very soon, which is around AI scoring. So using AI to score speaking and writing tests. And then a couple of updates, one related to sort of ID verification, and the last one is sort of student licenses, how you can actually purchase and use these tests within your school, organization, ministry, whatever it might be. But I'm now going to hand over to Dragos, who's going to talk us through the security updates that we've been working on.
Thank you very much, Ben. In my hopefully brief intervention, I'm gonna try to talk to you mainly about how do we see security in a remote environment. Ben mentioned 2 constructs which are critical for modern day exams, and those are anytime and anywhere. For anyone who has actually tried to deliver an exam, those 2 words are actually a huge pain. How can you deliver some results that you can trust, but you don't really know when the test is going to happen, and you don't really know what is the specific place where it's going to take. So whenever we are thinking about security, we have a vision. And before talking any sort of specific features that we're launching, I want to talk to you a bit about our vision, so we understand where any sort of EnglishScore updates around security should fit into that vision, and why anytime, anywhere is actually possible when you talk about EnglishScore on a mobile device. Now, the first thing I want to cover is the foundation of our security, and that is assessment security and information security. In order to deliver an exam, you need to make sure that the content that you have in that exam is kept in a secure manner, and people, before they go into the exam room, they don't really know what they are going to be asked to do, so that the examination is genuine. That's why we enforce a lot of actions in order to prevent item exposure, in order to ensure that our item bank is refreshed, and in order to monitor public spaces, in order to detect if any of our content has leaked outside. Now we have content. The next foundation for a digital exam in a remote place is information security. For anyone who thought about security in any environment, be it in a bank, be it in a hospital, or be it in an educational environment, security will always involve a trade-off between individual privacy and monitoring and the ability of the environment to look at what you're doing in order to ensure that you are actually respecting the rules and you are behaving as you should in that specific environment. So that's why information security for us is a prerequisite for anything that we're gonna update in the future, because we are aware that we are operating with sensitive information. In order to guarantee security, you need to know who your test taker is, how do they look like, where are they, and why can you actually guarantee for the scores and behavior they did. In a physical environment, that's quite easy. You have a person in a room which looks at them. In a digital environment, we are putting a lot of effort into ensuring that once we collect a lot of information, that information is kept in a secure manner and only people who should access that information have access to it. We put a lot of effort into defending ourselves from cyber attacks and keeping that information secure and only exposing it in situations where it should be. And we are going to understand in a second why this enables us to do extremely valuable, let's call it privacy infringement, once we are honest and dedicated to the privacy of our test takers. Now, we have content, we have a dedicated system that values privacy. What needs to happen next is we need to take an exam. We need to allow the test taker to take an exam. And that means you need to ensure that from the point where they found a room, they decided to take the exam, and to the point where they provided all the answers, throughout that journey, they haven't done anything that could affect the integrity of their scores. They haven't cheated, that they haven't used external resources, and so on and so forth. Now, the way in which we think about the exam security at EnglishScore is that we try to bring the language center to the tester. And what this means in practice, it means that we have the same expectations from a test taker when it comes to how they act and how they think about their environment, as if they were into a language center. The tweak we offer there is we let them choose the most accessible environment where to take the test. And this is what makes EnglishScore so valuable. It can be taken anywhere as long as you have responsible test takers. And if you do not have responsible test takers, that's where we will treat them in the same way in which an irresponsible test taker would be treated in the context of a language center. We want to give them the chance to access EnglishScore, to certify their level, but also we give them the confidence and the chance that they will act responsible, and if they can't prove that, we will sanction them. In order to ensure the exam security, for those of you who've been with us, we have AI which actively monitors their face during the exam. We have AI which actively detects speech in the same room and records noises so that we can understand if there's any change in there. We prevent them from leaving the exam space and the app. We ensure that they cannot take screenshots, and many other layers of security in that space. Now, the last point I want to talk about when we talk about security at EnglishScore is the certificate security, because it's useless if you have a score if you can't confidently present that score to other people and they can acknowledge that that score represents you and not a random person who took the test against you. And this is where we enable any sort of employer or organization who wants to check the integrity of our EnglishScore certificates to quickly go on our website and to verify whether the score they are seeing is valid for that specific person or not. Now, in the next minutes, I'm going to focus on the exam security, and I'm going to explore more on what sort of security measures we added in place in order to better understand where the test taker takes the test to further allow them to take the test anytime, anywhere. The most recent release we made in this space, it's an environmental check. Essentially, the test taker is required to provide a 360-degree recording of their room. Let's try to play this video. This happens at the beginning of the test. We use sensors of the phone, and this is where we take proud of being a mobile first exam, because we can use all the functionalities of the device to ensure that the video we are taking is going to be useful. And then in a similar manner in which you would do a panorama photo, for those of you who are familiar with the concept, we ask them to take a 360 recording of the room. If at any given point they go rogue, they try to avoid stuff, we can detect that through the use of sensors, and we can ask them to take the flow again. What we are aiming with this functionality is to help us understand if the examination room setup is appropriate for an exam. And now we need to be relaxed. We don't expect always to be a classroom with white walls, one bench in the middle, and then nothing else around the test takers. It can be a dorm room. It can be the living room. It can be a corner of the library where there's no one else at the specific the point where the test has been taken. What we are trying to achieve with this functionality is to ensure that we are giving the test taker the flexibility, but we also have a mechanism to check whether that flexibility has been used in a fair manner, and they are not twisting it in order to employ further cheating behavior. Now, what are we looking for in these videos? If you're going to scan that QR code, you will be redirected to our help center, where we are actually describing what's an ideal room for a test taker, a room which will never spark suspicions. But essentially, we are looking for any indication of cheating. Sometimes this is just the test taker avoiding scanning a corner of the room because they want to hide something. Sometimes it's just filming a person in that room. Sometimes it is a device that they keep in their proximity because they hope they could reach out quickly in the minutes they have to answer the question in order to answer it. Any of these hints can give us the idea that there is a motivation or there's potential for cheating and can contribute more or less to an invalidation decision. Even more important, and this is where we take pride from a product innovation point of view, it's a baseline for the exam setup. As you know, when a test taker would normally enter in an examination room, they may be perfectly clean. Maybe they don't have a headset in their ear, or maybe they do not have any extra piece of paper to help them with the exam. But during the exam, they may change, they may bring new materials and so on and so forth. Because we now know where the test taker is, we know where they are positioned, we know what to expect around them, we know what sort of behavior to expect for them. It's very, very easy for us to make a decision during the exam when AI takes pictures and recordings to detect an innocent person who just may be moved because they were uncomfortable from a person who suddenly brought a laptop next to them, and we can now detect it. Now, what if we find something? Well, depending on what we find, the exam is at risk of being invalidated. But I wanna have something on your mind. Our goal is to not invalidate every single person. Our goal is to find a balance between giving people the silence, the patience, the space to take an English exam, which is stressful for a lot of people. And then maybe if they do a little mistake, maybe if they tilt their head and their head is not visible for a second, we have enough confidence in what happens around them, and we have enough confidence in what incentives they had when they started the exam that we don't invalidate the exam. So we want to find the right balance between not punishing innocent people and punishing people who have a clear intention of cheating, where we can easily prove that their test results were malformed because they were held by a device of a person or anyone else. The second thing I want to talk about today is identity verification. This one is quite straightforward. Before taking an exam, test takers can be required to provide a photo ID to prove their identity. As long as it has a photo, it can be any sort of ID. Maybe it's a student abroad, so they will use a passport. Maybe it's a driver license. Maybe the national card doesn't have a photo ID. The system covers all the IDs in all the countries around the globe. So we are quite flexible with what we accept as long as it's genuine. The system will then check the integrity of the document. We look for proofs of fakeness in order to ensure that the thing that we capture is the real ID. Now, the reason we are adding this functionality is to actually give you the confidence that there's no impersonation. There's a lot of scenarios where dashboard admin cannot really check the identity of every single person they certify from the dashboard. We have pictures there. You can do that if you want, but what we are giving you with this functionality is an end-to-end experience where we know from the beginning who they are, and whenever you allocate the certificate, the person who you are thinking you are allocating certificate is the person that went through the process. What are we looking for? Obvious things. Is your name matching? Is your face matching? Do the recordings taken during the exam match with the thing that you have in your photo ID? If not, obviously, you will fail the verification. You will not be certified. You may, like you as a test taker, may have the chance to appeal if you think it's unfair, although what we are seeing in most of the cases is that the identity check is quite straightforward, and it's been used in other industries as well. So it's rarely that confusion arises in this space. Now, I'm going to make a quick callback to the information security point I made earlier. We are partnering with Onfido in order to deliver this functionality, which is a global leader in identity fraud detection. They are working with banks, with telecom industries. They are genuinely the ones that a bank would use in order to verify that when you're opening a bank account from your house, you are the person that opens the bank account and it's not a weird drug dealer. So we actually use the technology and the service providers that are being used by industries where security is a central point. The other reason we take huge pride in having them as partner is that data is securely stored and retrieved in their storage. Their storages are compliant with international certifications, are placed under GDPR regulations. This is, again, generally the place where a bank would probably place the identity documents they would collect in the process of verifying the identity. So this is how serious we treat private information. And this is why we believe that we don't only deliver a secure score, but also a secure experience for our test takers throughout the journey. To wrap it up, what does it mean for the exam security? It means that we are diversifying our anti-cheating insights. We now have an end-to-end test taker identification. We have a 3D understanding of the testing setup. And now whenever we have our AI monitoring, which happens live and monitors the face and the sound, we can pair that up with the information around the environment, and we can be better at identifying cheaters and being more friendly towards people who are just doing mistakes and shouldn't get their exams invalidated. As an anecdote, 3 weeks ago, we actually identified a mass cheating setup through this environment. I think after issuing the third or the fourth certificate, we've recognized the same room with the same facility. We didn't know about the facility where the testing was happened. We immediately shut it down. We suspect that there was cheating involved there. We are actively using this in order to shut down vulnerable points against our attacks. The other thing is we are trying to eliminate testing administration burdens. So if until now you had the responsibility to check who the test taker is, check whether their face matches who they are in reality, maybe you were the ones collecting the identity of the test takers. We are trying to remove as much of that burden and put it on our side so we can give you an end-to-end secure flow. That was it from my side. I'm going to hand it over to Ben, and I'm genuinely looking forward to any questions from you at the end.
Thanks, Dragos. I think both of those are sort of really exciting in terms of sort of giving confidence, I guess, to organizations and schools and so on. But also, I think for test takers, the genuine test takers who want to do well are going to be rewarded. So I think that's a sort of really important fairness aspect to it as well. So yeah, thanks for sharing both of those. And as I say, if you do have questions, please do put them in the Q&A or the chat area, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the session. Okay, so I'm going to now talk about a few different things, and the first of these is audit review. And I'm just going to start by asking quite a general question, but it'd be great to see your comments if you could add to the chat box. What do teachers and schools want to know about their students' English proficiency? It's quite a general question, but if you have any thoughts on that, if you could just put them into the chat box. So if you are a teacher, or perhaps you're an administrator at a school, what are the kinds of things that you would like to know when you're testing your students' English? So what I'll do, whilst we're waiting for people to drop their thoughts in, I'm going to outline sort of 3 things that we wanted to cover in an audit review. And essentially an audit review is the sort of giving a bit more information to schools, to organizations about how their students are performing. So as well as getting the sort of individual test scores for each student, what the audit review does is take all of that information from perhaps a class of students or a whole year group of students and provide you a bit more analysis and breakdown of results. So that could include things like you see in the left here, giving you a view of overall performance of your students. And as I say, this could be by class, it could be by degree topic, it could be by year group, whatever's going to be appropriate for your context. Secondly, we can also help you identify sort of which language skills, sub-skills should you be focusing on. So you may find that, for example, speaking is a bit weaker than the other skills, and that's an area that you should be focusing on over the next 3 months, 6 months, whatever it might be. And then the third thing that we include within this audit review is sort of some recommendations. So coming off, identifying what skills to target, how could you achieve this? What are some changes or what are some different approaches that you could use in your classroom when you're teaching students to improve, for example, fluency when speaking? So as I say, the purpose of the audit review is really to drill down and give you a bit more information, a bit more analysis behind the test scores, and hopefully that will feed into your teaching and learning. So it's not just a certificate, but it's also going to be improving the overall sort of education, the lessons that you're delivering, and so on. So what does this look like in practice? Well, let's have a look at a few examples. So this is an example of sort of drilling in or looking at the overall performance of students. So you can see on the left-hand side here, we've given a sort of average test scores. So you've got core skills, which is grammar, vocabulary, reading and listening. On the left, in the middle, you've got speaking, and on the right, you have writing. And you can see that, the core skills are slightly higher than the other two, but overall, this is a pretty good even result. So all the average score is around B1 in all 4 skills, which again is a pretty good result for that particular institution. On the right-hand side, you can see we've done a similar thing. We've broken down the core skills results, but we've done this by degree or by major, right? So you can see On the left-hand side, you have all the subjects combined and then broken down: maths, teaching, general, agriculture, and so on. And again, this can be really useful for institutions who perhaps want to understand where certain colleges or where certain majors are doing well, where their weaknesses might be, and then they can target their teaching accordingly. We can also provide a sort of a lot more detailed breakdown as well. So in this particular example, we looked at the writing test results, and we looked at specifically the sort of sub-skill results for writing. So the first thing we did is we broke the whole year group into 3 different groups. So we had a low group, which was around CFR A2. We had a mid group, which was around sort of CFR B1, so intermediate. And then we had a high group, which was sort of B2 and above, so upper intermediate, getting into advanced. And you can see that for each group, we had a language score, an organization score in red, and a communication score in green. And these are the sort of 3 sub-skills that we assess and we report on in the writing test. And when we broke down the groups and when we broke down the sub-skills, we could see a pattern where, for example, communication was improving. So people started quite low, and then as they went through and they improved their English, their communication score was improving, showing that so the teaching was effective, students were learning, they were improving their communication whilst they were writing. But we also found that organization, while it was improving, it wasn't improving as much. And you can see the difference, right? So when in the low group, they're almost equal with communication. By the time you get into the high group, there's a substantial difference. And this is sort of at least a CFR band, even more than that. So quite a substantial difference. And this was really useful for this particular institution, who were able to say, okay, great. It looks like our students are doing really well in sort of the language, so the grammar and vocabulary when they're writing. They're doing really well at the communication side and getting the message across. But where they're struggling is around the organization. So things like coherence and cohesion. And this was a really powerful, useful insight for them to say, okay, well, that's obviously an area that we need to focus on in our writing skills development going forward. And coming off the back of that, we then provided some examples and also, as you can see on the right-hand side, some tips on how to improve that. And this is just a snapshot of the kind of report that we can produce. But the key thing here is overall, while it's useful for a college or a school to get their individual test scores for each student, we're also able to provide that sort of insight into how does that affect your teaching? What would we recommend going forward? Where are the strengths? Where are the weaknesses? And how can you improve the student outcomes? So we've produced this for a few different clients. Feedback has been really great so far. I think people are finding it really useful, really powerful insights to help improve, as I say, outcomes for students, but also improve their teaching and learning. I'm going to move on to the 4th update, which is around student licenses. So we've seen already, Dragos talked us through the sort of ID uploads, talked us through the room scan, talked us through, and I've just taken you through the audit review. And I want to talk about how you actually access and can use the test as part of a university, part of an organization. And the way we do this is through student licenses. So we have 2 models, essentially. We have a pro and a basic model. Now, in both those models, each test taker gets 4 attempts at the test, which is a really useful thing. So that means that students, test takers, can actually try out the test. That's really useful in terms of getting familiar with the test and the format, structure, and what's expected. But as an institution, as a university, you're also able to use EnglishScore throughout the year. So you may use EnglishScore as a placement test. You could then use a couple of tests to check progress as you're going through the academic year. And then you use your final test as sort of an exit or certified English test. So again, having that license approach with multiple tests for each test taker means that you can really exploit the test and use it where it's going to be most useful for you. Now, on both licenses, you do get a certificate. And those of you that are already familiar with EnglishScore will know that that certificate comes with a score, a CFR level, a breakdown of sub-skills and various security features. And I won't talk too much about those. Again, with both licenses, you also get the dashboard, which I'm going to briefly pull up on screen. So this is the dashboard where, as an administrator, as a teacher, you can go in, you can see all your students, you can see when they took the test, what test they took, what their result was, and also what's their status. Have they been certified already? Are they due to take the test? Did they fail proctoring, security, whatever it might be? And as a teacher, as an administrator, you can search for a particular student or a group of students. You can look at those results, and then you can certify them directly from the dashboard. So you can look at the scores, look at the security proctoring photos and say, great, I'm happy, that student can be certified. So here we're making, it's a very practical, easy to use sort of administration dashboard that removes a lot of the tedious, time wasting that traditionally you have to do with testing. So as I say, that's included in both student licenses. The AI proctoring and post-proctoring review, again, Dragos touched on these with the security. That's included in both licenses as well, so that you can be confident in the results, and so we can make sure that the people taking the test are actually the right people. And then the difference between the Pro and the Basic is that with the Pro, you get that ID upload and check, as Dragos outlined, and also the audit review. So those insights into how can you actually use the test results for your teaching. So in terms of costs, you're looking at around $12.50 for a basic license, which is 4 tests and all these features that you see here. If you want to go for the Pro license, that's $16.50, and that gives you that ID check and also the audit review. If you are interested in talking more about this, please do go to our website. You'll see at the very top, there's a contact form. You can fill out your details and we'll get in touch. Okay, so we're now on to the final update that we wanted to share, and this is a bit of an exclusive. So this is coming very soon. We've been working on this for a while. We're piloting it, but we wanted to share sort of what we're doing in the grading space, specifically for speaking and writing. But before I get into the detail of that, again, I'm just going to put another question, just something to think about as we're going through this. Sort of what's important when assessing speaking and writing skills? And if you've got any thoughts, it'd be great to put those in the chat. But, that might be things like, what are the things I want to assess in speaking and writing? When I'm thinking about writing, do I want to assess range of vocabulary? Do I want to assess spelling and punctuation? Probably yes. So it might be the particular traits or the particular skills I want to assess, but it could also be other things, right? It could be sort of, how do I know that whatever I'm doing when I'm grading is going to be reliable? How do I know it's fair? How do I know it's going to be quick, right? So these are all kind of things that you need to think about when you're assessing, not just speaking and writing, to be honest, assessing any kind of language skill. Great. I see someone's added fluency and accuracy. Perfect. Absolutely. Those are the kind of things that you want to be thinking about when you're assessing. Now, before I jump into what we do at EnglishScore when we assess these things, I think it's worth thinking about the difference between human rating and AI rating. And there's been a lot of talk over the last year or two around AI and so on. And I think some of that can be quite negative. But we believe it has huge benefits for test takers, but also for teachers in terms of freeing up time and giving teachers more time to do what they're really good at, which is sort of motivating and encouraging, providing that support for students. But specifically when it comes to grading, traditionally, human raters are the way to go, and that's been done for many years. One of the big challenges with human grading is making sure that it's consistent. People are people and they get tired. And so if you've been grading something I used to be an IELTS examiner, I know it very well, that if you've been doing this for a long time, you do get tired. And so it can be quite difficult to remain consistent. Secondly, people have biases, conscious or unconscious biases, and that can influence your score. Now, obviously, there are things you can do. You can have training, you can have monitoring, you can have frameworks in place, but still, at the end of the day, it comes down to one or possibly two people assessing someone's writing and giving them a score. And that there's always going to be a bit of inconsistency in that approach. Now, if you compare that with AI grading, it obviously doesn't have that. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't care what you look like or what clothes you're wearing. And so it's able to do that much more consistently and much more reliably. Um, Obviously, you need to make sure that you are keeping that model that you're using for your AI grading up to date and so on. So it's not infallible. It's not just a case of letting it run. It needs to be monitored. But it doesn't bring all those things that we do see with human raters around tiredness or bias or those other aspects. The other thing around human raters is that naturally they take a more holistic approach. So it's very difficult for a human to focus just on, for example, spelling or just on range of vocabulary. And there's an effect called the halo effect, where if you've done really well, really badly in one area of, for example, writing, as humans, that tends to affect your scores in all areas. So if you're looking at a piece of writing and the spelling is not great, as humans, that starts to affect how the score you give for grammar. It starts to affect the score you give for vocabulary. And so this halo effect can start to affect all the scores. Whereas with AI doesn't do that. It will look purely at spelling, purely at vocabulary, purely at organization, cohesion, as someone mentioned, right? So it's much more focused on individual language traits rather than more holistic approach. And that avoids that problem of where if you do really well or really badly in one area, it affects your scores. One of the other issues with human raters is that it can be quite slow. Obviously, people, so they need to get ready, they need to look at the test, they need to score it, they need to feed those scores back. That can take days or even weeks to do. Whereas with AI, it can be instant or within minutes, hours, but no more than that. So you get that very quick results turnaround. And then lastly, if you're in a face-to-face exam with a human rater, that can be quite stressful for people. Not everyone. Some people enjoy that social sort of interaction side of things, but it can be quite stressful as a test taker. Whereas if you have an AI graded test delivered on a phone or on a computer, you avoid that sort of face-to-face stress. And as I say, it's not for everyone, but there is a lot of evidence to say that having that sort of online digital speaking test is much less stress for the test taker than doing it face-to-face in a room. And obviously practical considerations about, you don't have to travel to a test center, you don't have to schedule this and so on. But that's a sort of a broad overview of, I guess, humans versus machines, if you can put it like that. What have we done at EnglishScore? Well, again, those of you who are familiar with EnglishScore already will know that we currently use a mix of sort of automated and peer grading. And the reason that we use a mix is that up until recently, automated grading was really good at doing things like grammar and vocabulary and spelling, but it wasn't very good at understanding context and things like, did they answer the question? Did they actually give a good answer that I could understand? And so what we have been doing at EnglishScore, and we still do today, is we've used a mix of automated for some parts of writing, grammar, vocabulary, and so on, and then peer grading other parts of speaking and writing. How well did they answer the question? Have they communicated a clear message? And so that peer grading, the way that worked is that as a test taker, you would come in, you would take your speaking test, you would take your writing test. And then when you finish that, you would then grade other test takers. And you would give a 5-star rating, or you would answer a yes/no question about other test takers, and that would be combined with the automated grading to give an overall writing or speaking score. And you can see that on the left-hand side down the bottom here, where in part 5 of the writing test, for example, you had to grade others. Now, obviously, AI has come on quite a lot in the last year or two. And so what we've been developing is a new sort of model. And what that does is it takes out that peer grading aspect. So as a test taker, you come in, you do your writing test, and you no longer have to peer grade others. And that's because we now have confidence that AI can assess that context fit. Did they answer the question? Were they able to communicate a message? As I say, 2-3 years ago, that wasn't really possible, or it was very, very expensive and very, very difficult. It's now much, much easier to do. So in short, what will change? And I should say that this is not live at the moment, but very, very shortly. The test questions will be the same. So the actual writing test format will be the same. We have 4 different question types for writing, 3 different question types for speaking. They won't change, okay? The scores that we report, the sub-skills, so for example, language, organization, communication for writing, pronunciation, fluency, communication for speaking, the CFR levels, they will all be exactly the same. So nothing changes there. Peer grading will obviously be removed. So we will no longer ask test takers to do the peer grading. The individual question times will be the same. So currently you have sort of 5 or 6 minutes to answer a writing question. That does not change. Okay, so exactly the same. But because we have removed the peer grading section, the overall test time will be shorter by about 10 to 15 minutes for writing and about the same amount of time for speaking. So I think that's going to be the biggest change that people will notice, is that now we're able to get a score for writing and speaking with the same degree of accuracy, the same degree of reliability, but in a much shorter test. And so we're really excited to kind of roll this out and help and get our test takers using it and experiencing. Before I wrap up, let me just very briefly go over how we actually develop the model, because again, that's one of the questions people have, is how do you know it's accurate? How do you know it's valid? So the very first thing we do is we take thousands of real test taker responses. So for example, the writing test, we're able to ask our test takers to try these out. We collect all their responses. And then we have a team of expert graders, and they look at those responses and they grade them or rate them for language, organization, and communication. And we ask 2, possibly 3 or 4 experts to grade those, and we take an average of those scores. And that gives us an expert writing score. And that's something that we're very confident in. These experts are experienced, have been trained, and so on. So we have confidence in their score. We then take the same test taker responses and we put them through our EnglishScore grading model. Now, currently, that's a mix of AI scoring for language and organization and human scoring, that peer grading I was just talking about, for communication. And as I say, we combine those 2 to give an English score. That feeds into our EnglishScore writing score. And our aim is to get that correlating very closely with experts. So if an expert gave that test a high score, our writing score, our writing model should also give a high score. I'm talking about this for writing, but the same is true for speaking. Okay. So that's our current model. That's the one we've been using for the last few years. With the changes and removing the peer grading, so that is no longer part of our scoring model, we are now including communication within the AI scoring. Okay. But the principle is the same. We're taking lots of responses. We're asking experts to grade them. We are also using AI to grade them, and we're making sure that these 2 correlate highly. And the results have been really excellent in terms of correlation. And what we found is with the AI scoring, i.e. no peer grading, we actually get a slightly higher correlation than we did previously. So that shows that this is an improved model. They're giving more accurate, more reliable results than we were getting previously. So as I say, very excited to have this soon available in the test. And I see Dragosh has said, if you are interested in piloting this, please reach out. We're really keen to get a range of different organizations trying this out. So that brings us to the end. As I say, we had updates around security. We've had updates around sort of reporting and the analysis we provide, updates around the licensing approach, and then lastly, something coming soon around AI scoring. But it would be great if you do have any questions, please do put them in the chat and we will do our best to answer them.
think there's
I can see.
questions already in the Q&A.
Great. Okay, so I see one related to ID. So let me read this out. The ID photo may vary from the current look of a candidate. How do you manage that? Dragosh, I'm going to let you answer that one.
Yes. So the short answer, human in the loop. So we can always escalate and ask a human to make that decision. And then if the human is uncertain or the difference is like it's hard to analyze, we can always reach to the dashboard admin who owns the testing session or to the test taker, and we just delay a bit the certificate issue date until we figure that out. I think the other frame there is that we actually have a very tough experience with this flow. For an employer in Vietnam, we actually implemented an algorithm for automatic face swap detection. So basically they had employees testing every year part of their performance review. And you would try to see whether the employee had like the face has changed from one year to another because they couldn't access the IDs of the employees. And what we realized is that it's very easy actually to identify if the face is the same. The only big challenges are, I know, if there's a face mask, if the room is too dark and the facial characteristics are no longer visible. Otherwise, every face has a unique properties. And then we have trained people to look at those facial characteristics. But again, human in the loop, and then escalate to the test taker or dashboard admin for more details if needed. But those instances are quite rare. I think that's it. I think there's a second question there also from Eduardo. Can you read that? Sorry, my screen's a bit blurry.
Sure. Yeah. So another question: Can your image capture system recognize the corner of glasses or a piece of hair of a probably companion of the student during the test?
No. Sorry, it's on my side. Apologies for a second. Cool. The answer is we can definitely recognize it. But I think it's important to point out how our image characterization system works. So we actually use AI to trigger insights collection. The fundamental problem with security in exams, especially in-person ones, is that 95% of your test takers would just stay still and would focus on their paper and would not attempt cheating in 99.9% of the time. So actually, if you are thinking about a supervisor supervising an exam, they are wasting 99% of their time looking at people who are not doing something wrong. So what we're trying to do is to use AI to capture those 1% of moments where there's high chances of cheating. And that's why a mobile device is extremely critical in that experience. Sensors, camera, audio, specific user behavior and interactions with the device, all of these are triggering insights collection. Maybe a piece of audio, a photo, video, a specific event. And all of these are reviewed at the end. And maybe I'm tackling the next question as well, part of the post-proctoring review. So this is where all of these insights are reviewed. And one of the recurring invalidation reasons actually is capturing signs of a person next to a test taker, because there's either a shadow or a hair or a hand, or just the test taker constantly not looking at the screen and interacting with the person that's next to them. And then at some point we get a little signal in the form of a picture that tells us that there's someone there. So we don't actively capture hairs, but organically, because of the way in which AI works and the way in which test takers behave, we capture those kind of proofs and we invalidate exams. Yes.
Great, thank you. And we've also got a question from Ruben. I don't know if you can see that in the chat, Dragos.
Yes. Just to close the loop on the audio recordings in the post-proctoring review, yes, audio recordings, room scans, all of this are being reviewed. We collect a lot more information than what we put on the dashboard. And this is where, again, we try to take care a bit of the privacy of the test taker. We want to give you a bit of the information about the test taker, but internally, our proctoring team has access to a lot more things about the exam, and that's why we have a lot of power to invalidate. You were talking about Ruben's question, Ben?
Yeah, so he had a question about what about people who find it hard to see, who can't see well and have to get closer to the screen.
Yeah, very, very good and timely question. So we worked hard to make all the exam content scalable and all of the text to scale up so that the test can actually be completed with the largest font possible on all of the devices. So that's one thing that we worked on. The second thing is for people with real accessibility needs which do not have the possibility to use the app, we actually have a version like they have a flow through our operations where they can ask for a specially proctored exam where we try to accommodate with their eyesight problem. So if the fonts on your device and the color on your device and those settings can't be used, then reach out to us and we are gonna remove the security and we are gonna have someone in person looking at you while you take the exam, or we arrange something with the university, or there's a lot of solutions that we've employed in the past just to make sure that every single person that wants to take the exam can take it regardless of their accessibility requirements.
Thank you. And I think we've got time for one more question from Marlin, who says, the thing I'm concerned about is that this can be done on the cell phone, and I guess candidates could be able to cheat easily. Again, over to you, Drago. Sorry, you're getting all the questions this evening, but a really interesting topic. I think the whole security thing is.
I think I'm gonna take a step back and say the only reason we can scale mass testing, it's because it's on a device that's easily accessible by every single person on this globe. It doesn't matter if your device is $100 or $1,000. Mobile device penetration is rapidly penetrating all the communities around the globe. So I think it's important to be aware that the reason we can offer accessible English testing, it's because we can do it on the device. So then the question is, how can we work around the device constraints? Then that's when I'm going to flip the question. I'm going to say, actually, being on a mobile device, it's an opportunity rather than a constraint, because the device gives you so much information about the test taker does through the way in which the phone is handled, through the way in which you can use the camera, through the way in which you can look at the brightness, through the way in which you can look at whether the user is inside an app or outside an app. You can actively listen to what happens around the test taker. You can even interrupt the mobile experience and ask them to do something during the test. All of these things are hardly achievable in laptop environment or in a desk environment. And all of these things are actually opening the door for us to give a person who can't afford an expensive exam, but they still need the confidence offered by an EnglishScore certificate and a British Council-backed score that they get with us. So we are doing our best to close all of the security gaps. I think a lot of the people in this meeting have organized exams, I'm assuming. You know that you can't always catch 100% of the people. There's always going to be that crazy techie person who will go around everything. But we believe that for the rest, 99.9% of the people, we are doing an amazing job. And I think the key aspect there, and this is where I'm going to wrap around this topic, is we need to stop looking at evidence of cheating, and we need to start looking at evidence of cheating intention. Is the test taker behavior and the test taker intention that gives them up even before they cheat. And that's where, if you know how to read those, and if you can use technology to detect those intention, for example, are you constantly looking at your phone, or do you constantly move your eyes somewhere else because someone is talking to you, or because you're looking at a second screen? I think these kind of hints, together with the room scan and everything else that we're doing, give us quite a high confidence that people with bad intention are easy to catch and easy to be sanctioned.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm conscious of time, so unfortunately won't be able to answer everyone's questions. Before we close, just wanted to share this with you. So um, as you've joined the webinar today, we'd like to offer you a free certificate for both, well, all three of our core skills speaking and writing tests. So you're able to download the app, try out all three tests, and get a free certificate with this code. So that's WESAI 100. And yeah, it'll be great to hear your feedback, great to hear your thoughts around your whole testing experience. And also, if you have any sort of feedback or thoughts or questions on this webinar, please reach out. Again, I think a few people are keen to pilot the AI grading, and I'm sure Dragosh will be in touch to do that. So I think just to say thank you very much for joining. It's been great to share these updates with you that we've been working on for a while, and we're really excited to sort of have them out there and get people experiencing them and using them. And I hope you found this sort of interesting and useful. And yeah, hope to speak to you all again very soon.